Well, Barr's been making the rounds of all the interviews, and this is one with NPR that we're going to talk about. And I've got several other things to share with you, so stick with me, folks, and I'll be right back. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and yeah, Barr went on NPR. And it was interesting. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Before that, though, I want to give you a little bit of information about some other stuff that you might have missed. And I've got this right here, this picture. And you can see that POTUS just looks really tired. But you know what? I think he looks like the kind of person that many of us are after we've worked a really hard, long day. And we've put in time trying to do the best work we can. So I think that's really what's going on in this picture. Of course, the mainstream media has been using it to try to say he's just not up to the job or whatever. And I like what this person said. He said, for the last few decades, we've watched presidents appear in certain places jacketless, sleeves rolled up. It was for show, a fraudulent attempt at connecting with blue-collar workers. It was meant to say, look at me, I'm just like you. This picture is not a fraud. The left is attempting to use it as a negative. It's not. This is the look far too many of us that have worked a night shift or a 48-hour shift or a third job are too familiar with. This is been working my butt off for the American people, good old-fashioned exhaustion, born of love. Not for what you're doing, but who you're doing it for. This isn't an attempt to say anything. This is a candid shot that screams, I'll do anything for my country. And I really like that. This was one that President Trump retweeted, and I really think more people need to see this side of him and understand exactly what he's doing for us. As always, I'm going to put the links to these down below if you want to get the picture. You know, all you have to do is right click and then you can save the image as. So you can do that. And speaking of what President Trump has been doing, well, guess what? We've hit the number 200th judge. And so the Senate has now confirmed that number 200. And that is really huge. I mean, that's the most I think any president has ever appointed. So he's really doing a good job with this. And it's very important that he can get these conservative judges in there. And really, it's not even a matter of whether they're conservative or liberal. It's a matter of whether they're going to adhere to the Constitution. And that's what's really important. Our Constitution and our laws need to be interpreted as written, not made up or twisted around to mean something different. And if you notice what it says here, 1 in 5 federal judges were picked by him. That's really incredible. So we're getting there, folks. This has to be in place. It's a really important part of everything. So we have to have good judges in there. Well, then I wanted to show you this because I know most of you've already heard me talk about the oath and everything. Well, you know, it's still going on. There are a lot of people that are still adding to that. And if you do a search for it, you know, with the hashtag on Twitter, you still see a lot of tweets. Well, this one I wanted to show you because this is an important one, and it's led by one of my favorite patriots right here, Admiral Rogers. So here we go.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter. So help me God.
And so there you go. You know, that's the oath that they take. And I think this is something we need to remember, and we need to hold the government officials who have taken this oath to task on it, because this is not something, it shouldn't be something that you just say, oh, well, I'm just saying words. It really does mean something. And so I think we need to make sure that they understand the oath that they've taken and that we hold them to account on it. So, in case you're interested in not just taking that oath to be a digital soldier, maybe you're interested in actually joining one of the military branches right now. I can tell you that because of the virus, things have been a little lean, evidently, with recruitment for the different military branches. So, this is an ad, basically. This is an interview with one of the United States Army recruiters, and he says that they're looking for 10,000 soldiers in the first ever nationwide hiring campaign. It's going to be evidently a online type thing. So if you're interested, I mean, you can watch this video. I'm not going to play it, but they interview him and he tells the different kinds of things they're going to be doing. And here are some of the perks that go along with it. Of course, there is an age requirement and people like me are way too old. And of course, I'm not in good enough health to do anything like that. But if you're between, I think he said 17 to 34, I think that's what they're taking. And you can get into the reserves if you're a little bit older than that. So, check it out. If it's something that you think you'd be interested in, who knows? And especially with the reserves, it's not a full-time job. So it would be something that you'd be able to work around whatever job you're in. So it might be something that would fit you. And if it is, when I was in high school, there was an ASVAB test that you took to give a skills assessment to see if maybe you could be something the military could use. I didn't know at the time, and I kind of wish I would. When I look back now, it's like I had no clue that the Army had so many different kinds of jobs. And I think there would have been jobs in there that I could have done. And they had teachers. I could have taught languages even. So who knows? It just, one of those options that you always wonder, what if I had taken a slightly different path? So I don't know if you're in that age range and it sounds like something that you might want to do. Now would be a great time because look, they've got some bonuses and stuff. They're really trying to get more people in because, like I said, it's been hard recruiting. They haven't been able to go out and do the one-on-one type of recruiting they normally do during this time period, and especially right now because they do. At the end of the school year, usually they get in touch with a lot of these seniors that are graduating and don't have plans for college, and they can talk to them. And so, it would be something that you could help out your country and you could also help them out. And it looks like it would be a pretty good deal here. Just wanted to give you that information so you could check it out for yourself. This is a nice video. It's 5.5 minutes, so definitely worth watching. And along the lines of the digital soldiers, I wanted to point out this page. I'm going to leave the link down below. I'm not going to go through it all. But this is one of the researchers who gave their opinion of what is meant by being a digital soldier. And so these are the missions and really what you can do with them. So I just thought I would leave this. I'll leave it down below, the link for it. And you can check through and you can see what it is and see how this would fit together, if it's something that you believe that's true or not. Remember, when I give you posts like this is a researcher's opinion. It's not the 17th letter of the alphabet's opinion. So, but a lot of you have probably heard that recently there's been a massive exodus from Twitter over to Parler. And not even just, a lot of people are doing accounts on both, but honestly, it takes a lot of time to do social media. It really does. You get in there and it's easy to spend a couple of hours on Twitter and all of a sudden I'm like, well, where did those 2 hours just go? And Facebook's a similar thing. You get caught up in what's going on and you think of something else you want to share. And, you see posts that other people are making and that gives you ideas for things yourself. It can be very time consuming. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just, it does take up time. So a lot of people right now are going on both. They're going back and forth between Twitter and Parler. But Parler has now, look at this, it's taken the #1 spot away from Twitter. So, of course, they're not real happy about it. But this is the reason. social media alternative Parler doesn't censor, fact check posts, CEO says. And so I'll leave this link down below for you, and you can look at that. One of the things, though, about this is you do have to have a cell phone to be able to access this, because they send you like a message to give you a code to get in every time you log in. Well, if you are taking the precaution that I always take, which is wiping out my history and all the cookies when I shut down my browser every night, which I think is wise to do security wise, but then you have to keep logging in every time. So that's a little irritating. But anyway, this is about Parler, and some people call it Parler. That's fine, but I have heard that they intended it to be the French word parler. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard. Well, obviously the liberal media is not real happy with it, so they've decided to make some not so nice comments about it. And so I will leave the link to this down below so you can read about it. But I think Carpe Diem was the big one, that when he was tossed out of Twitter, that's when a big bunch of people left. And then there was another one that was a big guy, but his name wasn't familiar to me because he's not a conservative. But he was also tossed off of Twitter. And then today, evidently, when I'm recording this on Monday, Sidney Powell, got suspended. I don't know why, I don't know what, but you know what? Not a smart move, Twitter, because you just suspended a lawyer who is top-notch and who's not going to take this lightly. So you better watch out. I think it's going to be dangerous. Well, anyway, if you are on Parler, I'm on Parler. It's Truthification Chronicles. That's who I am. And I still haven't learned how to do the Parler thing to put links up for it, because it doesn't always seem to work. But General Flynn's on there. Yes, he is. And this is the real guy. Yeah, this is really, really him. And a few days ago, when he did the trifecta, with Hannity and Limbaugh and Levin, he posted this. And that was also the day the 17th letter of the alphabet said some things about this. And so digital soldiers are on the move. Get ready. And they're still trying to decipher exactly what this meant. So they believe there's some kind of code down here, but they haven't come up with it yet. So I don't know what it is. That's above my pay grade. I can't do that kind of stuff. I'm not autist enough to do that. But anyway, so yes, he does have an account. And he mentioned today, Sidney Powell, see, this account is temporarily restricted. And it's like, yeah, not good. So he posted about that. That was just earlier today. And then he posted this. Well, this is an op-ed that he did for the Western Journal. And he says, if we don't act, 2% of the people are about to control the other 98%. And this is a really, really good opinion piece here. And it says a lot of things that we would expect him to say, because he understands what battle we're facing. And he says, I was once told if we're not careful, 2% of the passionate will control 98% of the indifferent 100% of the time. The more I've thought about this phrase, the more I believe it. There is now a small group of passionate people working hard to destroy our American way of life. Treason and treachery are rampant, and our rule of law and those law enforcement professionals who uphold our laws are under the gun more than at any time in our nation's history. These passionate 2% appear to be winning. Despite there being countless good people trying to come to grips with everything else on their plates, our silent majority, the indifferent, can no longer be silent. If the United States wants to survive the onslaught of socialism, if we are to continue to enjoy self-government and liberty of our hard-fought freedoms, we have to understand that there are two opposing forces. One is the children of light, and the other is the children of darkness. I mean, he doesn't pull any punches. He's really giving us information. So I'm going to leave this down below. I really think you need to read the rest of it, because he encourages all of us. He says, basically, wake up, folks. You've got to wake up. And we've got to stop this, because if we don't, socialism's like a cancer, and it's just going to take over our entire country. and it will not be recognizable anymore. So that's what the left is trying to do. We know that. I mean, they don't even hide it anymore. So this is a really good article that I think you need to make sure that you pass to other people, because it simply must be stopped. That's the thing. It has to be. People are losing patience, and laws must be enforced. No one is above the law. Isn't this kind of ironic, where the Democrats, that was their mantra for how long have we heard them say that? I mean, it's like every time you turn around, nobody is above the law, and especially during the impeachment, nobody is above the law. Well, it appears to me some people are above the law because they sat there and let them just take down these cities and burn and pillage them and did nothing to stop it. That to me seems like they believe that some people are above the law. And, when you talk about that, just think about it and ask people what they think, when it says nobody's above the law. How does that factor in when you send a bunch of positive patients back into nursing homes? That's got to be addressed too. All of this, nobody is above the law. The problem is there are some people in our country who do think that there are. And I like what he says here. Don't fret. Through smart, positive actions of resolute citizen patriots, we can prevail. Does that sound like the people on the research board? Sure does. Always keep in mind that our enemy, these dark forces, invariably have difficulties of which we are ignorant. And he goes on, they appear to be strong. I sense they are desperate. So I think they are. I really think he encourages prayers, and prayers are great, but you also have to combine them with action. Faith without works is dead. So you can say, I trust you, Lord, that you're going to do this or that, and you can ask him to do things, but when it comes down to it, he expects you to do your part. So that's basically what Flynn is saying here. He's saying, get off your butt, folks, and we need to start taking this country back, or it's going to be lost. And of course he means taking it back in the sense of, standing up for the rights. He means it totally in a legal way. Be aware of that. He's not saying that you need to take steps that are outside the law. Totally support the law enforcement officers, and we need to take a stand for law and order. So I thought this was a really good article. Again, I will leave the link down below so you can read it on your own. Well, I've got to tell you, I told somebody in the comments that I would address this in this video. There's a lot of people who were like, why didn't Trump go in, and why isn't he sending in the troops to take care of this? Okay, here's the deal. This is what the Democrats wanted him to do. They were hoping that if they let things in their cities go so bad, then President Trump would be goaded into stepping in there and sending in the military, having them fix the situation. Then they would turn around and they would call him a dictator and a tyrant and all of that kind of stuff. That's what they were hoping for, because then they would have some kind of grounds. They would think they'd have some kind of grounds to impeach him. And this is also what they were doing with the whole virus thing. I mean, how many times did they do things? You had them say, well, we need 40K ventilators, we're desperate. And I think they were hoping that that would show the American people that he was unprepared and everything. But what did he do? He turned around and he got all these businesses to start making ventilators. And all of a sudden we have this great big surplus. And no American citizen went without a ventilator who needed one. Because President Trump stepped up and he did what he needed to do. But he didn't use the military. See? And then they said, oh, we need testing. So what did he do? He got people to make the tests, and there was testing. And then they said, oh, but we need PPE. We got to have more. We don't have enough. It's just bad. And so what did he do? He started getting factories to make PPE for everybody. So he took care of that need. And then they complained because of beds. They didn't have enough beds. Well, guess what? Then he sent the ships up to the different places, each coast. And he had the Army Corps of Engineers convert the Javits Center over. It was just like every time they were complaining about something because they thought they got him, Then he turned it around and he made it a success. And it's like, oh, you need this? Okay, there it is. And they had no excuse. I mean, he was taking all of their excuses away. The whole thing about the vaccine, oh, it's going to take 1.5 years, 2 years before we can have it. And he's like, oh, no, it's not. And all of a sudden, it's put on the fast track. So see, all of these things they've been complaining about, they needed this, and they were hoping to catch Trump on it. It wasn't working. So they thought the military would do it. He's going to send in the military. Surely he'll send in the military. But he didn't. And I think you need to look at this. This is an Epoch Times article and by Brian Cates. And he says, Trump and Barr fooled them all. And I really agree with what he says on here. It's kind of a long article. Well, it's not real long, but I don't want to take the time to do it all. But he basically goes through and he says the similar things that look at all the things he's done. He's gone through a fake impeachment and all of these different things. And he's suddenly faced with an escalating series of simultaneous riots in cities across the nation and everything. And we know the situation with that. And then down here, it says, while the Democrats and the media anticipated getting the optics they so desperately craved of Trump sending in soldiers with bayonets fixed, charging at the peaceful protesters, what they got instead was the sudden appearance of a bunch of federal tactical units from the FBI, the Secret Service, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the U.S. Marshal Service, the Bureau of Prisons, and other agencies in full gear, many with no rifles, and certainly no bayonets. As the entire nation is about to belatedly discover, federal agents don't need the permission of governors or mayors before they can enter a state or a city to enforce federal laws and arrest those who are breaking them. And it happens to be a federal crime to conduct terror attacks against American communities. Da-da-da-da! There you go. So for those who were wondering why Trump hasn't, I really think Brian Cates has it here. So I'm going to leave the article down below. Unfortunately, guys, the thing is, the Epoch Times has changed their way of doing things lately, and you have to have an account to read these things anymore. So you may not be able to actually read this whole thing, and I apologize for that. But, you know, folks, it's $16 a month. It's well worth it. You not only get access to all their articles online, they have a nifty little reader too that you can have, you know, that you use when you're doing this. It's really nice. It'll read it to you too. But you also get once a week, you get a paper, and it's a pretty hefty paper. I mean, it's got several sections and everything. So it's not just a couple pieces of paper that they send you. So it's really nice. I highly recommend it. I don't get anything from them for saying this. I just love the paper. I take it with me whenever I go to the chiropractor. I sit there and I usually have to wait for a little bit. So I always get to read it. And it's like, today he got me a little faster than before. And it's like, oh, I didn't get to read everything yet. So I really enjoy reading it though. So anyway, I wanted to just share this with you. And again, I'm sorry that it's not public domain, but I think it's really important for you to understand that this is working out. It really is for Trump and Barr. They are doing the right thing by not sending in the military, because that's what the Democrats want them to do. And when they're doing this, Trump is simply too smart for these people. He sent in the feds, who spent the past week quietly taking down Antifa behind the scenes, and now it's mostly over. Once again, they lose, he wins. So, great article there by Brian Cates. And I told you I would give you a little bit of a summary on this. Believe me, it's going to be very brief. You want to know what this was the oversight that they had for the DOJ. Okay, they had a couple of whistleblowers come in, and of course they were Mueller people. So they came in, and the Republicans decimated them. But unfortunately, there weren't very many Republicans, so it was only a few of them that actually did that. There was some hullabaloo at the beginning because Nadler wanted to let his witnesses just ramble on and on and on in their opening statements. The one guy was 2 minutes over. Louis Gohmert started tapping his pencil and everything. And then you got Doug Collins in there saying it's not right and this and that. And of course, Jerry's being a real stickler about the masks, and he won't let anybody be recognized if they're not wearing a mask. But they can take the mask off in order to ask questions, which does work at least a little bit better, but still the Republicans are none too happy about that. So anyway, but here's a summary of it. You want to know what happened in this? I'll tell you. First of all, according to the Democrats, Bill Barr, bad. I mean, that was just like said several times over. Ooh, he's an evil man, according to them. And according to their whistleblower, yeah. Which, by the way, the whistleblower was not a witness to anything. He was a hearsay witness. He never was there when things were that he was talking about happened. He wasn't there. He was just telling what other people told him. So, does that sound familiar? Does sound that way. And then the third thing that really this was all about was, well, the career officials are mad because A.G. Barr doesn't do things like we want him to do them. And we're the people who really run the government. So he should be listening to us, and he doesn't listen to us. How dare he? That really is what the whole thing was. There you go. It's like 4.5 hours long. I just saved you the whole thing. You don't need to know anymore, because that's exactly what happened. All the way through, it was just repeated over and over and over again. Well, I came across this article. The EPA chief urges defunding of NPR, sacred cow that needs to be slaughtered. Well, yeah, this was on the 26th that he said this, because they had an interview with him, and he says down here, so many reporters have blurred the line between reporting and editorializing. And she was editorializing, and I thought it was supposed to be an actual news piece. I didn't realize it was just an editorial. And so he says, yeah, it reinforces in my mind that NPR should not be publicly financed. It's just ridiculous. So I thought this was pretty interesting, which leads into the main topic for this video, and that is this. Okay, Barr was on NPR, but I will tell you that they chopped it up. Okay, they always do, when they're doing these interviews. This is the full transcript, I think, of the whole actual interview. I recommend you read this, because the rest of it is not necessarily going to fit everything here, because they cut things out. Like, for instance, when they were talking about Roger Stone, and I don't remember how far down that was, but a lot of this about Flynn's case and Roger Stone, they cut out a big chunk of it, of what he was saying. And of course, it was the part that people really needed to hear and not the other. Although they did put in a few pieces that I was surprised they did. But the questions were all definitely left-wing gotcha questions. Definitely. So if you want to hear them, the actual interview, I'm going to give you these links. But I'm telling you, folks, I don't know if they'll be up when you see this video. Nothing I can do about it, okay? Because I searched the NPR site, I didn't find their version of it. So, an actual recording. This thing that's up at the top here, that's actually the live thing. I did not find any place where they have a repository of their audios. Maybe I missed it, but if so, let me know, and I'll be able to go tag it and put that link down below, because I just don't think these links are going to stay up much longer. Just letting you know, okay? So don't get mad at me if they're not there. But I will provide them for you. Listen to them fast, okay? And this one's almost 9 minutes long. That's part 1, and then this is part 2. And this one is 11 minutes long. Now, keep in mind, these are the ones that they ended up using, so they're chopped up, and it's not everything that he said here. It's really good to read what he said here. But it's always nice to hear the tone of voice when he's talking. He didn't let this guy get away with anything. So, of course, the parts that made this guy look bad, those are the parts that he cut out. But, yeah, like here was about the Roger Stone, and here's where he was talking about it. And basically, they're trying to make Roger Stone out to be this evil genius or something. And he's just going through saying, well, this is what was fair and what they had was not fair. So anyway, I'll leave the links to this down below. But I do have a few clips from this that I want to share with you. Okay? So just in case this whole thing gets removed, at least you'll have heard these clips. All right? So let's go.
In every case, was it appropriate to intervene at the highest levels in what was being done and what personnel did it?
Okay, well, all cases in the Department of Justice are subject to the supervision of the Attorney General. In fact, all the powers carried out by the department are vested in the Attorney General, and it's appropriate for the Attorney General to exercise supervisory authority over cases. So starting with the Flynn case, Flynn was entered into a plea agreement before I arrived. It had been there for a long time, and because of legal squabbling, the sentencing didn't come up until after I was Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And he had a new lawyer, and she raised a lot of claims, including misconduct by the government. So I brought in somebody who had been a former FBI agent for 10 years and a prosecutor for 10 years, and I asked him to take a look at it, and he recommended that the charges be dismissed.
What I'm driving at is the underlying power here. There's nothing inappropriate about you getting so involved in a case involving a friend of the president. Is that your view of the law?
Well, what I'm saying is, Flynn was an appointee in the administration. I don't know whether I would refer to him as a friend of the administration, but
yeah.
That's unless there's some conflict of interest that I have, it is appropriate for me to deal with it. And I've said publicly that in those cases, it's very important that the Attorney General make sure that there's no political influence at stake involved in that, and there wasn't.
See, he was just trying to catch him, but Barr is really good at these interviews. He goes through, he knows how to counter what they're going to ask. He knows ahead of time what they're going to try to do, and the gotcha questions they're going to try to ask, he already has it figured out in his brain. He knows. This guy is on the ball. So I really enjoyed listening to this. Let me do another one for you here.
Let's take a case that, according to a witness before Congress yesterday, sounded like an abuse of power. Prosecutor Aaron Zelinsky, who said he was a whistleblower, said that in the Roger Stone case, he received pressure to change the sentencing recommendation in a way that he considered inappropriate. And he said he was told by his supervisor that was because of political pressure, because of a fear that the president would be displeased if another course was taken.
Right. Well, the supervisors have said that much of what he said was simply false. So
he named a supervisor, Jim.
But and the statements he made, he said, he admitted were double hearsay. He had no direct information. He had never talked to anyone involved in the decision, whereas I actually made the decision. I was the decision maker in that case because there was a dispute. And usually what happens is disputes, especially in high-profile cases, come up to the Attorney General. And what actually happened in that case is the four prosecutors who had prosecuted the case, the first line, they wanted to recommend a 7 to 9 year sentence on Stone. And the U.S. attorney felt that was too severe and was not justified under the circumstances. I made that decision based on what I felt was fair to that person, never discussed sentencing with the president, and that decision was made well before the president's tweet about that case. Now, regardless of his relationship with the president, he doesn't deserve a break, but he certainly doesn't deserve to be treated more harshly than everyone else.
So yeah, he got him on that one. I just thought that was a tremendous answer because, the guy thought that he had it. Well, then he went on and he was talking about voters. Well, but, this is just overstepping the presidential boundaries and powers. He shouldn't be doing this. They try to paint Trump so much as a tyrant, as a dictator. And yet, Look at what he did. And this is why he did it, folks. When it came down to the COVID, when it came down to these riots and things, he stepped back because he knew the Constitution gave the first response and the authority to the governors. And so he placed the responsibility back on their shoulders because they're the ones that the Constitution says are supposed to be running their states. And that's why he wasn't going to step in unless one of them said, "Can you please help us?" Which is what happened in Minneapolis. They eventually did. And so that's why the National Guard went in and it took care of it right away. This was part of the plan, folks. This is how it had to go down, because if he would have sent in the military, everybody would have said, he's just a dictator. That's what we've been telling you. He's a dictator. Now, they're still saying he's a dictator, but you can point to these instances where he didn't do it. He didn't just go into states and tell them how they had to run their states when it had to do with coronavirus. He didn't just go into the states and say, this is how these riots will be taken care of. I will do it for you. He didn't do any of that because he's not a dictator, and he knows he's not a dictator. And he's never given any reason for anyone to say that. He supports the Constitution, and he was following what the Constitution said. They're mad at him because he followed what the Constitution said he should do. And their governors didn't. So let's go on, because now, like I said, he's going to be talking about the voters.
You have indicated that the appropriate limit on a president's power is the people, is the next election, that the president has supervisory authority over law enforcement, that he can involve himself in a case, even if he has an interest in the case, and the appropriate remedy is the people can vote him out or keep him. What do you say to voters thinking about how to vote this year, who see these cases and see a pattern of a president who continually wants to interfere and actually does appear to interfere in cases where he has an interest?
Well, I would say taking them one at a time. There was a lot of hinky stuff in the Flynn case. Everyone knew that. Everyone was wondering, why was this case ever brought? We actually went back and found documents that showed there were a lot of irregularities in what the FBI did. So I would say that justice is being done in that case. I would also say that the same is true in the other case you mentioned, the Stone case. He got the sentence that everyone else would have gotten for that conduct. That's justice. That's the rule of law, treating like people alike.
So later on in the interview, he said the same thing.
And let me circle back to that big question. How do you answer a voter who sees a pattern here of continually upholding the personal interests of the president?
Well, I'd say that there is no such pattern. I would say that that is a media narrative that has been adhered to, where things that happen all the time in the Department of Justice are misrepresented to the public and cast as somehow suspicious. There was a Democratic senator who said that, being the Attorney General is like being a sheriff standing in front of the jail. There's always the mob, and these days the media is very prominent among the mob, who either want someone hung or they want them sprung. And part of what the Department of Justice is about and the Attorney General is about is ignoring the mob and the calls and the false narratives and doing in each case what they think is right.
Because you mentioned equal justice, can you name a case or two where you have intervened so dramatically where the person involved was not connected to the president?
Off the top of my head, I'm sure there were a number of cases since I've been here that I've done that.
You can't think of one, but...
Well, frequently, we don't go discussing who's under investigation at any given time.
Okay. But you're saying there are other cases where you have personally involved yourself in...
Yes. When cases come up, who do you think they come to? And why do you think we have one Attorney General? We run a department that looks across the whole country to make sure people are treated equally. You can only do that if you have one office that's responsible for that, and that's me.
Ba-boom! But obviously, he was talking about a lot of different things. The whole interview was good because he didn't let this guy get away with anything. And so it was very entertaining. But I want to show you this part about the voting issues. Obviously, there was a big part about Jeffrey Berman being released, but again, Barr handled it well. He didn't let this interviewer coerce him into saying anything. You know, it's just, this is something that they do. When you're put in the job as an acting U.S. attorney, then you're kind of living on borrowed time. And he did say that. Okay, now in here before this, they were talking about the unitary executive. And if you don't understand the idea of the power of the executive as a unitary executive, you might want to watch the video I did on that, because I had some quotes from Barr on that. And I think that'll help clarify what they talked about in the middle here, in case you want to read that. But I want to get to this part right here about the Durham investigation, because, yeah, he tried to nail him on it, but again, couldn't do it.
Does the president have the power under the Constitution to tell you how the Durham investigation needs to come out?
No.
He has supervisory authority over law enforcement.
To tell us how the investigation comes out?
His report
an investigation of facts, or is an investigation of facts? I mean, even the president can't change facts.
He can't tell you to have the report come out a certain way, regardless of the facts.
No, I don't think he can. I mean, I think Durham is going to report the facts.
So there is a limit on the president's interference in law enforcement then?
I've said
underlying facts is what the limit is.
Yeah, I have said that, for example, if the president directed an attorney general to indict somebody where there was no predicate, no probable cause, and no basis for the indictment, that would be a grave abuse of presidential power. And no attorney general would carry that out and be worth their salt.
Hey, and he cut the rest of that statement out. I thought that was kind of funny, you know? But yeah, it wouldn't be worth his salt, like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Yeah, they weren't, because they did what Obama told them to do. This is what is so psychological projection on this, because we know that's what they did. So anyway, here is about the election, because I think this is important for you to hear.
What instruction, if any, has the president given you about assuring a secure election in 2020?
Well, our main focus has been obviously trying to ensure against foreign influence. And so we have a very strong program, interagency program, trying to monitor efforts by foreign countries to influence the election. And we're committed to trying to prevent that, or if we can't prevent it, at least alert the American people as to what's going on. Other than that, the Department of Justice always is concerned about election fraud.
Some people noticed when you raised concerns about the security of mail-in ballots, as the president also has very loudly and said without evidence that there's a lot of fraud or can be a lot of fraud. You raised a specific concern about foreign entities counterfeiting ballots and mailing them in.
I think there's a range of concerns about mail-in ballots, and let me just clarify here. I'm not talking about a mail-in ballot for a limited number of cases where somebody, is going to be traveling around the world, and the way the state has provided for that is you mail in your ballot. I'm talking about a comprehensive rule where all the ballots are essentially mail-in, and there's so many occasions for fraud there that cannot be policed. I think it would be very bad. But one of the things I mentioned was the possibility of counterfeiting.
Did you have evidence to raise that specific concern?
No, it's obvious.
It's obvious that it can be done.
Of course, we go to a lot of. Why do you think we go to the problems we do in crafting single-dollar bills?
Sure.
Because make it hard to counterfeit. Now,
do they not also go through procedures like that with mail-in ballots?
You've seen them. They're pretty primitive.
Are you able to share any evidence that intelligence agencies have gathered that any foreign entities have targeted this area?
I think foreign entities are. I have specific reason to believe that there are a number of foreign countries that do want to sow discord in the United States by undermining confidence in the results of the election. And I think if we do adopt programs of mail-in, that will be an area which they will exploit. And I think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out.
Do you believe that an election conducted mainly by mail can be secure?
Personally, no.
So, personally, no. And then they cut the rest of it off. I mean, we just mailed out checks under this program. And what is it? I heard something like 20% or something were misdirected, but they didn't put that in there. See, we know there's going to be problems because guess what? We just went through it with those checks. They know the likelihood that things are going to be misdirected. They're going to be sent to dead people and all of that. So it's very obvious. I love the way he says it, his tone of voice on this, when they said, you know, do you have evidence? No, it's obvious. Like, any moron can see this. So anyway, that's all I'm going to share with you on that, because I told you in the last video, I put a lot of the voter type things in there. And of course, you know, they don't like us talking about controversial subjects. Of course, they define what controversial subject is. So it's pretty much anything they don't like. But anyway, I also wanted to share just this. I'll leave the link down below so you can read the whole thing. But hey, guess what? The American Postal Workers Union just endorsed Joe Biden for president. That seems to me like could be an issue, especially since if you checked out that last video, I think it was the very last thing I did on that video, that postal worker dumping those congressional flyers into the trash. Yeah. So I'm sure this is going to be fair. There's more than one post on this. And so I just, yeah, it's very interesting when you go through. It's not anecdotal or rare, folks. It really is not. So, yeah, I think that you need to check this out. I will put a link to this down below so you can check it. And I think this is a really important point here. If you recall, and I saw this, you know, when they were trying to get this second stimulus package passed, and they put in there a huge package for the United States Postal Service. Gosh, I wonder if there's a connection. Yeah, so anyway, there you go. Don't forget, all the links are going to be down below. They're in the description, okay? They're not in the first comments or pinned comment or anything. They're in the description, so you can see them there. And, you know, you have to usually click something to pop open the description. And now it's even different. If you have a mobile device, they've changed it a little bit, and you have to actually click to get the comments to pop open now, which I think is not good, but oh well. That's what they did. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.